What about all the maybe equipment? Like if you have an office, if you're a counselor, and all your equipment, like a computer and desk, couch, would those all of that kind of stuff, is that a write-off?
Yeah. Well, what we need to do there, first thing is, yes, but that equipment and that use of that stuff would be deductible. So if I have a computer, again, exclusive use, then I get to deduct that in my trade or business, even if I don't have an office and home, because that is part of that business. But what happens is, and I'll go through some other expenses. See, the way the form works, the 8829 for office and home, it has what we call direct expenses and indirect expenses. And so let's say a direct expense is the fact that I have a telephone for my business in that office. That's direct. That's 100%. And generally the word direct means 100%. So anything that is strictly business direct, I'm going to get it. But the indirect things would be the utilities for the whole house. So in utilities, then let's say 10% of my house is an office and home, then I'm going to take 10% of the utilities. Now, I could have a repair that's in my office, this table, I'm going to take that repair. But if I have a repair that is like I'm painting an area, that may be, if it's for another part of the house, it doesn't count. So again, we got to look at direct. That means it's strictly something for the office and home only. Indirect is a percentage allocation based on, I'm going to use that example of 10%, and then unrelated, the rest of the house, the furniture upstairs, it doesn't count. It's unrelated. So I think that's the important thing. Is it directly related? Is it indirect related? That means we get a percentage again, or it's unrelated. And then probably the final big item everybody's looking at is the depreciation. And so that's where there's special rules, and the way the form and office and home works, it's going to let you have, you're going to, for office and home, be able to deduct anything that would be normally deductible as an itemized deduction. 10% of the mortgage interest. If we're going with this example of 10%, I would get 10% of the property taxes. But let's say that I end up with a trade or business with a loss. That depreciation is going to be 10% of the house. And because it's a trade or business, the depreciation is for 39 years. And if I have a loss, that depreciation is carried over to the next year and to the next year. So the key here is the fact that, again, you are limited on your losses, and depreciation is the biggie.
So let's just kind of recap real quick. Indirect expenses like utilities for your whole house or property taxes, that would just be the percentage of your house that you're using. So if you have 10% qualifies for office and home, then 10% of your property taxes can be deductible on your tax return, correct?
Yes.
Okay. But then if it's a direct expense, say it's a computer for your office that you're using, well, let's use the couch instead. Like, so I'm a counselor and I have a couch for only my clients to sit on in my office and home. That is 100% deductible because that's a direct expense for my business, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about that couch. What is a good practice for buying a couch? Can I buy something? Like if I want a $5,000 couch that I just think is so pretty, can I buy that? Or do I need to stick with a $200 couch?
So now we're going to look at another area of a trade or business, and that is ordinary and necessary. Don't you like these phrases? Ordinary and necessary. So for example, your example of I'm a counselor and I've got this couch. It has to be ordinary and necessary. So I buy a $10,000 couch and I live in Salem, Missouri. That's not ordinary and necessary to carry on my business. So again, I'm going to come back again. That's the thing about tax law. Everybody thinks there's this exact answer. A while ago, John, you were asking a couple of questions, and my takeaway was almost like I can just, where's that bright line at?
Right.
So all expenses have to be ordinary and necessary. I can't have my office and home and build a swimming pool out back and say, well, I need the therapy. There's actually, I've taught a couple of court cases almost like that.
I believe it.
Because again,
Massage chair.
What's ordinary and necessary for that business? And I'm glad you brought up a massage chair, because I've taught cases in that area, and I'm a CPA, and I can say, boy, my back hurts. That helps me. What's the difference in me, Larry Personal, and a CPA firm?
Right.
Okay. So John, I think that's very good, because who does it benefit? Because see, that massage chair for a CPA firm is personal use. So that's actually, if you're an employee, that should go on their W-2. Okay. If you're self-employed, you should pay the taxes on it. It's not deductible, because it's not what? First, it's not part of the business. It's not necessary, and it's not ordinary. So reasonable. Again, I always say, pretend for a moment you had a jury looking at you, and they didn't know you.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't know your business, and they go, you're doing taxes and you personally need a massage chair, or you're doing counseling and you're charging, $125 an hour or something like that. You can't, a $10,000 couch is not
right.
reasonable.
Okay, so let's just, I'm sorry, he answers all my questions before I can get to them. He's like, you ask about equipment. Let me talk about equipment, indirect expenses, and depreciation, all real quick in one sweep.
I'm sorry. I got to follow the questions. This is like being in a courtroom. I'm sorry, Your Honor.
I mean, I think that's a good point for, imagine people you don't know, 10 of them, and asking you, did you really need that $10,000 couch? Is that really going, like, you have to justify yourself. You should be nervous about it. You should err on the side of, I mean, probably not, but it was a super nice couch. It really brought the room together.
Right. But I think part of that, be reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
The thing about it is that if you have a house that the house payment, is $900 a month, why are you buying a $10,000 couch?
Yeah, right.
Okay. Does that fit in your budget? Does that make business sense?
Right.
Are you going to get to a profit? So I think the thing again is ordinary and necessary. There is no exact science. There's no bright line. There's no percentage. But what would an independent group of people, and the reason why I use that is because, we always think, I use the example of a jury because they're supposed to be independent. Is that reasonable? If this coffee cup was gold line and this coffee cup was at $250 a cup, does that fit into what we're doing here?
Right.
No, it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
So too many times the thing people try to do is push the personal deduction.
Right. And it makes sense to me. There's a difference between picking $1,000 couch and maybe $1,100 couch versus a $10,000 and a $20,000 couch. Mm-hmm. If you're deciding, like, should I spend the extra $50? I'm sure would that be a reasonable assumption? I'm sure that a little extra money is fine. If I'm going to support like twice the amount of money, then you might have to start reassessing.
Yeah. And I'll just kind of do a side note here in the area to give you a relationship, is that most people anymore take mileage instead of actual depreciation on a vehicle. So if I get mileage, and it's the last few years, it's always been 54 or 55 cents a mile. Am I going to go out and buy a Mercedes and get 54 or 55 cents a mile versus buying, a Chevy, a Ford, a Toyota, mm-hmm. and get the exact same mileage? Well, people look at you and say, well, I'm not going to pay all that extra cost to just get that deduction. So again, there's a good example of reasonable, and I think that's what we have to look at.
Sure.
Yeah. So if you don't qualify for office and home, are there any of these expenses that you could still use to deduct on your tax return?
For the most part, anything related to the home, no. But, and it's like with what's going on right now, a lot of people are working from home. So, I work from home. And what happens is that my business phone, the office provides me a phone. I still get to deduct that, even though I'm using it in my home right now. I have a computer, computer screens, and printer. I still get to deduct that because, see, that's not related to the office and home. That's directly related to my trade or business. So I think that is important. So anything, printing supplies, any kind of expense that would be normally deducted in your office that supports you. So again, mainly computers, phones, supplies, printer cartridges, repairs on that stuff. That would be covered. But as far as again, the direct stuff related to the office and home, no. But especially equipment would.
Right, that makes sense.